In 2023 alone, the United States faced 28 major weather disasters, the highest number ever recorded in a single year, each costing over $1 billion in damages. So how do US farmers deal with this? Normally, Florida's farmers harvest over half of the US's oranges each year. Much of these 846,000 tons harvest is transformed into orange juice and sold nationwide. In Texas, farmers plant vast fields of cotton, which is also the state's top crop, accounting for 40% of the nation's production. These fields yield 3.10 million bales of cotton, with each bale weighing 500 pounds. Nebraska is renowned for its corn production. In 2022 alone, farmers here harvested nearly 1.8 billion bushels of corn, much of them used for livestock feed and biofuel production. Many farms in the US have been running for over 50 years, like this 59-year-old seed potato farm in Montana, supplying certified disease-free seeds to potato growers across the Pacific Northwest. These seeds grow the russet potatoes that eventually become mashed potatoes on your dinner table or the crispy fries you enjoy from McDonald's. Each year, millions of pounds of these potatoes are harvested, stored, and sent to processing plants. But the idyllic life of farming is often interrupted by the unpredictable force of nature. Drought, excessive heat, wildfires, flooding, hurricanes, and hailstorms pummeled farms, leaving fields and barns in ruins. In Montana alone, fire consumed over 900,000 hectares of public and private land. In Texas and Kansas, severe drought and heat waves led to over $14.5 billion in crop losses. This particularly affected cotton, wheat, and forage crops. Flooding also wreaked havoc with over 490 lives lost, particularly in New England, where states like Vermont and Connecticut face some of the wettest conditions on record. Meanwhile, Hurricane Ian caused $1.5 billion in crop damages in Florida. This caused losses of over $304 million of fruit and citrus crops, such as oranges. In Idaho and Montana, the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted the entire potato supply chain. With restaurants and hotels closed, the demand for potatoes collapsed. As a result, the biggest seed potato farms in Montana was forced to bury over 1.4 million pounds of unused seed potatoes in a massive burial pit. That's around $140,000 in losses for just one farm. Across the region, this loss added up to $8 million, as over 1.5 billion pounds of potatoes were stranded. Many farmers in drought-prone regions like Texas and Kansas have shifted towards drought-resistant crops and improved water management practices. They install drip irrigation systems, use moisture sensors, and collect rainwater to conserve water during dry spells. Some also adopt crop varieties that can withstand low moisture conditions. Ranchers also rush to sell their livestock earlier, before the peak of the drought, to keep them from starving to death and saving money. They also switch to raising Brahman, a type of cattle native to India with a high heat tolerance. Farmers also invest in infrastructure that can withstand disasters. After the floods of 2019 in Nebraska, many farmers now build flood barriers around their houses, fields, barns, and silos to protect the crops and farm. In hurricane-prone areas, some farmers use windbreaks or plant crops in a manner that reduces wind damage. During tough times, turning surplus harvest into a resource has become a crucial lifeline to mitigate farmers' pain. For example, surplus milk was used to produce more cheese, butter, and powdered milk, which extended its shelf life and made it easier to transport and store. Excess fruit and vegetables were processed into juices, sauces, and jams or donated to food banks. In Montana, farmers mixed their excess potatoes with straw and compost to create feed for their cattle, ensuring that next year's calves will benefit from this year's hardship. In Texas, produce that is too damaged for market is sent to facilities where anaerobic digestion turns it into methane gas to generate electricity. Florida farmers have turned to converting damaged oranges into animal feed and organic fertilizer. Meanwhile, vineyards in California, hit by wildfires, are using the charred remnants of the grapes to produce high-quality compost that helps rebuild soil fertility. Although there have been many improvements in preparing for natural disasters, the damage is still often overwhelming when hit with full force like these in the recent years. Once a disaster strikes, US farmers first assess the damage and begin the recovery process. In 2023, Texas farmers faced over $4.8 billion in losses, with the majority due to drought, and Florida's agriculture was hit with over $1.2 billion in damages from Hurricane Idalia. As of 2023, about 90% of the US crop acreage was insured, so often after such events, farmers typically rely on government aid and insurance payouts to rebuild, but recovery is often slow and incomplete. Then, depending on the time of year and severity of damage, farmers might attempt to replant crops after a disaster. Despite the destruction, American farmers always look to the future. Fields are replanted, barns rebuilt, and optimism restored. Besides natural disasters, wild animal invasion is also a huge problem in US agriculture because it causes millions in losses to this $236 billion industry. Now let's take a look at the most notorious culprits that farmers across the US battle. First, let's have a look at coyotes, a cunning predator that causes chaos for livestock farmers. In 2020 alone, coyotes were responsible for over 60% of all lamb and sheep predation losses, costing farmers over $21 million. Their preferred prey is young lambs, but coyotes have also been known to attack calves, chickens, and even household pets near farmsteads. And then there are the wild boars, the most destructive invasive species in American agriculture. Spreading from Texas to California and even up into the Midwest, wild boars are responsible for $1.5 billion in damages annually. They dig up fields, eat crops, and destroy irrigation systems. A single boar can tear up acres of land in search of food, leaving a farm looking like a battlefield. Their population is particularly high in states like Texas, Florida, and Georgia. So how do farmers fight back against these relentless threats? For deer, farmers rely heavily on guard animals, like donkeys or llamas, which instinctively protect herds from predators. In more rural areas, night patrols and trapping programs are in place, as coyotes are nocturnal and often roam when farmers are asleep. But by far, the most debated tactic is coyote hunting, which is still legal in many states. Lastly, combating wild boars is like going to war. In states like Texas, where wild boar number in the millions, farmers use hunting and trapping as their primary defense. Helicopter hunts, where farmers fly over infested fields and shoot boars from above, are not only common but also a necessary evil for many large-scale farms. Others set up baited traps designed to catch entire boar family groups, aka sounders, at once. For a more aggressive approach, some farmers use dogs trained specifically for hog hunting. These dogs can track, bay, and even hold a hog in place until the hunter arrives to make the kill. This method is particularly effective in dense brush, where visibility is limited, and hogs might otherwise be difficult to locate. Even more advanced methods, like boar-specific contraceptives, are being researched to control populations without the need for mass hunts. But with boars being prolific breeders, it often feels like a losing battle. Imagine losing millions of dollars worth of livestock in less than an hour. This is a cruel but true thing that can happen for many farmers when natural disasters strike. Farms are completely destroyed. Millions of cattle died when farmers failed to respond promptly to natural disasters. Natural disasters are a constant threat to agriculture livelihoods, causing billions of dollars of losses annually. Cattle farms are especially vulnerable. This is because cattle depend on farmers for food, shelter, and veterinary care. Interrupted care due to natural disasters can lead to widespread animal deaths and economic hardships for farmers. According to the Food and Agricultural Organization, natural disasters cost about $123 billion in lost food production each year. Floods and droughts are the most frequent culprits, accounting for 83% of these losses. Regions such as Asia and Africa bear the brunt of the consequences, with losses exceeding $25 billion for each disaster. Nature poses a serious threat to herds, devastating grazing lands and disrupting food supplies, which can lead to famine. Tornadoes resulting from this storm cause more livestock damage than the storm itself. The winds that accompany tornadoes knock down trees, and this is also one of the causes of cattle dying during the storm. The USDA reported that short-term livestock production losses from the storm were estimated at $30 million, not including infrastructure. Among them, missing livestock accounted for around $8 million. Floods can make pastures unusable, while droughts can cause widespread food shortages. Poor sanitary conditions can cause the spread of disease in cows, causing them to die en masse. Flooding is especially dangerous because the cattle can easily drown if they become trapped or cannot find higher ground. Damaged barns and fences expose cattle to potential danger from predators and risk of injury from debris. We are seeing herds of cattle trapped by floods. They may be swept away. The consequences behind the floods are unpredictable. The cattle that could have died due to the flood were dragged away, and after the water receded, the corpses gradually appeared. Even if the herd survives, they will face a long-term health problem from being submerged in water for days and going without food for long periods of time. When the cattle carcasses were found, farmers did not deal with them immediately. They are trying to rescue the lucky cattle that had survived first. The consequences of natural disasters on livestock go far beyond the initial death toll. Disruptions in agricultural production caused by these events could lead to a domino effect, causing food shortages,
due to reduced milk and meat production. This affects communities whose needs are dependent on the cattle. Farmers face economic hardship due to animal losses and the burden of repairing damaged infrastructure. These disasters can also pollute water sources through floodwaters and fecal spills, affecting water quality for both humans and animals. Rising floodwaters can quickly flood pastures and barns, trapping and drowning cattle. Rapidly rising waters often leave farmers little time to evacuate their livestock to higher ground. This disrupts the reproductive cycle and increases the risk of disease outbreaks. Research shows that livestock productivity is affected during and after disasters because of a combination of factors, including limited access to food and water, illness, and psychological stress. Besides floods, a natural phenomenon that often accompanies storms is thunder. Lightning bolts travel 30,000 times faster than the speeding bullet, causing instant death if they strike. Neither humans nor animals can avoid it. A tragic end for the cattle trying to escape the storm. The lightning struck a tree before hitting the cows, and 19 cattle were killed in that single lightning strike. Most of the cattle would hide under the trees, and they were fine before the storm. But after the storm, they all unfortunately died. The tree they were hiding in had scorch marks, and the trunk was split. Farmers can rely on signs, on carcasses, or in the environment to determine if the cattle died from lightning strikes. Farmers need to watch out for heat waves and droughts. These also pose a significant threat to cattle health and survival. Extreme heat can lead to heat stress, a condition characterized by dehydration, increased respiratory rate, and ultimately death. Studies have shown that heat stress can also negatively impact milk production in dairy cows. On the other hand, drought can cause severe water scarcity, causing cows to become dehydrated and malnourished due to a lack of enough food to forage. Although data on specific cattle deaths due to a drought is limited, it remains a growing concern for livestock and farmers worldwide. Heat waves and droughts due to climate change are increasing in frequency and intensity. During these times, livestock are the silent victims of natural disasters. Next come wildfires. These can engulf pastures and barns with devastating consequences. Fast-moving fire leaves little time to escape, and cattle trapped in the fires are often seriously injured or die. When the largest wildfire in Texas history tore through the Panhandle in late February, thousands of livestock burned, along with more than 1 million acres of grassland. Fires have rocked America's largest cattle ranching region. Agricultural damage caused the total product value to decrease by $219.8 million. Another catastrophic Texas farm fire killed 8,000 cattle. Although firefighters continued to fight the blaze, the rancher lost everything overnight. The devastating storm caused tornadoes and record snowfall in South Dakota. The cattle were in the pasture when the blizzard hit. They quickly got cold because their winter coats had not yet fully grown in. The cattle were completely exposed to the blinding snow. Some wandered for miles before collapsing and suffocating in the falling snow. Although winter thunderstorms are not new to this area, this blizzard surpassed even the worst predictions. The blizzard brought high winds ranging from 30 to 80 miles per hour and dumped 18 to 24 inches of snow. Livestock farmers are suffering after a record snowstorm. The worst has come, and thousands of cattle have died in the thick snow and bitter cold. The cattle that were lucky enough to not get stuck in the snowstorm still faced many difficulties on the farm. Cold snaps and heavy snow can also affect the health and comfort of pets. Besides this, too much snow affects food transportation. Farmers must regularly push snow to clear access roads and clear animal paths. After a natural disaster, rebuilding a herd can be a lengthy and expensive process. Most facilities will need to be repaired. Besides this, dealing with the number of cattle that died in the disaster is also a huge challenge for farmers and related industries. Farmers can also create a safer future for their cattle and ensure the sustainability of the livestock industry in the face of climate change. Preparing food reserves to prevent natural disasters. Working closely with government agencies to facilitate faster responses. In an emergency, helping to evacuate livestock to a safe area faster. This minimises losses and improves overall farm resilience.